A world tour mechanic has touched thousands and thousands of tools and products over the course of his career. But which ones does he recommend? Which ones does he swear by? And which ones does he absolutely despise? Today, we're getting the truth, unfiltered. Jayco Alula, mechanic Craig Geater, steers us on this journey. Welcome to the podcast, Craig. Craig, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
Good to have you back, mate. Polls, social media, and there was like an overriding question. Like, you've been around some of the best products, some of the best riders, you've seen every fad from product to components to tool come and go over the course of your career working on the bikes. I want to try and get to the heart of the tools, products, components, bits and pieces that you just couldn't live without, the stuff you've loved over the last 15 or so years. When I say that question, does anything jump to mind instantly where you're like, oh, I love that?
Well, I used to say that my hammer was a favourite tool because you could use it anywhere, but we don't really use it too often anymore. But yeah, I would say that just the simple Allen keys, probably the most common used tool that you'd use now. Allen keys with a torque wrench, and you can almost basically more than 3/4 build a bike with a set of Allen keys.
Yeah, I've gone through a fad of, I was buying very cheap tools, and I was buying tools on like Temu and Alibaba and stuff. My dad was flat out just giving me abuse on it because he's like, they're just going to break. I'm like, they're not. It's a great spanner or whatever for €4, and fair enough, they nearly all broke. So I've kind of gone the other direction in the last while, and I started buying slowly because they're expensive, but I'm starting to accumulate. Like, I bought a Abbey Tools pedal wrench last week. Have you used this?
Not the pedal wrench, but I've got a few of the other tools from Abbey.
Yeah, like the construction on them just feels like, I don't know, like there's love and care gone into the construction of it. You can tell it was made by somebody who like loves cycling.
Yeah, well, and they're quite light as well, the tools in general compared to other tools. I actually have a small, we have our normal toolboxes, but when we travel away, like I said, I'm off to China on the weekend, and the big toolbox is just too heavy to take, so I take a smaller version, and it's actually got quite a few Abbey tools in it that are light and strong and really good to use.
So if we kind of maybe segment this and break it down, like one of the areas I find myself working on the bike most is just drivetrain. And I haven't really settled on a good way of maintaining the drivetrain. Kind of my current workflow is, and everyone's going to give me shit for doing this, but I clean the chain with diesel to strip the chain. And then I'm taking it off maybe once a month, and I'm dropping it into, like the crock pot dynamic. Have this crock pot, you drop the chain in with a bit of wax it up, and that kind of lasts me a month to 6 weeks, as long as I'm kind of diligent with wiping it down with a rag and then reapplying the drip wax. That seems to work pretty well for me, but I'm sure there's definitely a better way of doing this. What are you guys doing for drivetrain maintenance?
Well, I mean, yeah, it is common that probably every mechanic in the history of being mechanic has reverted to using diesel at some point or another. It's probably not the best because it actually gets inside the pins and cleans them all out so that there's nothing inside anymore. But it does, it's more of an aggressive type. We use a typical, your standard factory biodegradable degreaser or normal degreasers that you can buy off the shelf in any shop. And then, depending on where we're racing, what we're doing, we'll either use wax chains, or we'll use we've got some lubes that are basically like a wax that are sort of low friction and good for dry weather. And then if you've got bad weather, then you need sort of a wet weather lube that's a little bit heavier duty. And but yeah, it's pretty standard. But wax chains seem to be the way most people are going these days.
Yeah, so just putting this together into an actionable list for people, to sort of bits they can pick up. So you need something to be cleaning off the drivetrain, like you were saying, like a biodegradable cleaner. And then you think two different types of, so you have a wax, drip on wax, we'll say, and then a wetter lube. And that's kind of your drivetrain package.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Nice. And then so when we get on to cleaning the bike, I live in an apartment, so I'm upstairs and there's no access to running, like obviously there's access to running water. I have showers and taps and shit, but I don't have a place I can clean the bike that's pretty good inside the apartment. I don't have a balcony or anything. But I recently got a power washer, like a bike specific one. I think Muck Off's the brand. And I've been blasting the bike out of it with that. And so I'm using a bit of Muck Off or washing up liquid if I'm short on Muck Off, rubbing the bike down and then blasting it with the power hose and towel drying it off. If I'm building out that package for cleaning the bike, what are the bits I need around that?
Well, our bikes, we simply use just your normal dishwash liquid to do it. You can buy your Muck Off stuff and things like that. We had Muck Off as a sponsor a few years ago, and they actually do quite a good bike wash. I use it on my car because it leaves a bit of a waxy surface over it as well. But yeah, I think the power washer is the bit that you have to be careful of. You don't want to spray it too heavily into the bottom bracket area or the bearings in your hubs on your wheels. That's where you tend to get water pressed in through the bearings, and eventually they end up getting damaged. But yeah, in general terms of washing, like that's the basic principle of washing a bike is spray it with either soapy water, and then you dry it down. It's always handy if you've got like an air compressor to blow the water out of everywhere, but that's not always accessible for many people. So drying it with a towel or something is also quite fine, as long as you haven't power forced water into all your bearings and stuff.
Yeah, I'd say I was probably guilty of that when I used, especially if I went to your own or something, you just stop at the garage on the way home, stick €2 in and power blast it. If you do that, or you're using something like a Muck Off and you think you're getting water into the bearings, can you blow that out with the compressor, or do you just need to strip them apart?
You can blow it out. Like most bearings these days are sealed bearings, so if you're using high pressure water, you have the option that there is the possibility of the water getting in. But if you every now and again, if you just put a little bit of grease over the outside of the bearing, and then the dust caps onto your wheels, or most bottom brackets these days have a little cap that goes over the outside of the bearing, and it's got a small layer of grease around there, then that helps protect the water from getting any further into the bearing.
That's a great tip. And are you just letting the bikes drip dry, towel dry? How are you drying them after that?
We always use, most of the time we have an air compressor. We've actually just got these little things that look like hair dryers now. They use a Makita battery. I guess different brands have different things, and it's like a hair dryer, but it blows the water out of all the areas of the bikes, and we use that when we're travelling without the truck.
I've seen them. They look, I think I've seen Dynamic have one. I think Muck Off have one as well. I haven't got one yet. I've never played with them, but they look interesting though.
Yeah, they're quite good, and I think they're only around sort of 50 to 70 euros for one of these things. That you probably get them at a cheaper price somewhere else. But yeah, we've been using it, and they're really good when we're travelling overseas at races, and we don't have the luxuries of having our vans or our trucks with us.
So just to recap for people, so again, making it tangible. So they're going to bike everyday washing. You need some sort of pressure washer. Like washing up liquid will do if you don't have a Muck Off for cleaning it. A bit of grease around the bearings. You want to have the grease handy, and then also something for drying the bike, like that new heater sounds ideal if you can stretch the budget on it. And then in terms of maintenance, we kind of opened at the start saying Allen keys and hex, set of hex wrenches do most of the work now. If you were to kind of have a really lightweight toolbox that people are bringing, in the back of the car to races and stuff, and there's like 4 or 5 tools in that, what are people putting in that are kind of essential to do 90% of the jobs?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. You need a set of Allen keys, the hex ones and the standard ones, and then screwdrivers. You only really need 4 screwdrivers if you need them at all on a bike these days, but a small and a big Phillips screwdriver, and a small and a big flathead screwdriver. And then obviously most chains have the chain links now, so the little the little pliers that pop the link apart, or if you need to put a new link back in, and you can almost you can almost get away with just about that.
And for tires, because this is an area that's really popped off in popularity in the last few years, and if you talk to some of the gravel guys, they're nearly changing tires every day. They're riding a course like Unbound, and then the next day they're pre-riding it again, and the course has changed, so they're changing tires. A lot of them have pro mechanics with them, but for people that aren't lucky enough to have pro mechanics and they're changing out their own tires and they're filling new sealants, what's the toolkit of bits and pieces I need to be regularly changing tires out when I'm running tubeless?
All you need really is a set of tyre levers. Most tyres go on and off pretty easy onto tubeless rims or hookless tubeless rims. And then your sealant probably helps if you have a spare, you don't always need it, but a spare rim tape in case the rim tape gets a hole in it anywhere inside the rim. And then obviously just your tyre and your sealant, and you're pretty much set to go. And
what's the hack if the tyre doesn't go on very well? Like, say, we know some tyre brands and wheels don't play well together. Vittori and Zip don't play super well together.
Yeah, generally, if you try to, it's difficult to explain, but if you try to, obviously you put half the tyre on first, and then you go around and seat the tyre in. But if you keep it in the middle of the rim and sort of pinch grip where the beads used to be on the tyre, it actually gives a bit of a slack spot where it's a bit easier to get on. If it's really difficult to get on, you can revert back to the tyre levers, where if you hold one end of the tyre and you slowly wedge your way around until it pops in. But yeah, there are a couple of brands that are pretty difficult to get on, but in general, most generally go on okay.
I just had a tires like a couple of months ago, just broke my heart, and I ended up reverting to letting them steep in a warm bath of water to try and get the rubber to be a bit more pliable, so I could just pull it apart a bit more. Like, my girlfriend came in, I'd like stripped down to just my boxer shorts because the sweat's everywhere from like pulling this, and she's like, "What are you doing? There's tubeless sealant everywhere all over the apartment." And I was like, "Don't worry, it's under control."
Yeah,
It doesn't happen to you now.
We used to have that with Continental tubulars. They were like firing a bow and arrow across a field. They were just about impossible to get on.
Sticking with tires, pressure. We're seeing a lot of these on-the-go little mini electric pumps now. Is there any real application for those for a mechanic, or are you just still old-school track pump?
No, we in Jayco, all the riders, they get to choose their tyre pressure. Some guys ride really, really low, and some guys ride a little bit harder. There is recommendations with body weights to what pressure you should run on our Cadex tyres, which is what we use. But most people generally tend to run, in our team, in Jayco, tend to run between 3.7, 3.8 bar, and 4.5 to 4.8 bar.
Yeah, there's cool tire pressure calculator. We actually have a tire pressure calculator as well. I'll link it below. That's really good for each brand, rider, conditions, and tire pressure gauges are so cheap as well now that there's almost no excuse to not dial in. And actually, that's one thing I've added in the last year that's made a big difference. It's tire pressure gauge because my track pump, like it's the old school, like a clock, and it's just not super accurate. And you're like, whoa, I'm actually 6 psi different than what I thought I was when you put the gauge on.
Yeah, we always use the gauge. Quite often when we're away at races with the truck, we'll use the compressor to pump all the tyres. We sort of have this habit of our maximum tyre pressure is 5 bar because we ride hookless rims. So we'll pump them to 5 bar, the race bikes, and then within half an hour before the start of the actual race, because you could be preparing hours before you actually get to the race. And when the race starts, we'll half an hour before or so, we'll put in the exact pressure with the gauge to so the rider has exactly what they want.
Is there any mechanics used to be famous for, these crazy workaround and hacks to make stuff work where it didn't always work? Does the equipment now just all play so well together, or is there still a need to hack and bodge stuff together?
We're a little bit limited these days because there's obviously as the years go by, you used to not take shortcuts, but you used to make do with what you had, and you could get things to work and adapting things, chopping things up, rearranging stuff. But now you're not allowed to actually alter most parts on the bike because of the UCI rules. I can't remember the word for it off the top of my head, but it's you're basically not allowed to change anything as it should come in the box. But we had a bike in yesterday actually in our service course here in Italy, and the computer mount but it wasn't one of our team bikes. It was somebody asked us to fix it, and the computer mount had broken off the handlebar, so we ended up putting a small aluminium piece inside the handlebar and then epoxy gluing a new mount on for the guy, and within 2 hours it was just like brand new. But yeah.
I'm genuinely proud of my little man cave. My escape, my safe place. It's not glamorous by any means. It's crammed into the spare room in our apartment with bikes stacked in the corner, boxes everywhere, and the smell of chain lube is just kind of hanging in the air. But in that corner, that's where the work gets done. That's where I switch off from everything else and I lock in on my training. And the centerpiece of it all, it's the Wahoo KICKR Bike Pro. Honestly, it's the ultimate man cave bike. The thing just feels alive under you. It climbs, it descends, it shifts all automatically. You can dial into your exact position to the millimeter, just like your outdoor bike. And with the new setup, everything's smoother, quieter, and way more immersive. It's that perfect mix of comfort and performance that makes indoor cycling feel like a privilege, not like a punishment. And look, I'm Irish. I'm sitting in Ireland recording this right now. I know what it's like to wake up, look out the window, see wind, rain, and sideways hail, and think, do I really want to be out there today? And that's where the KICKR comes in. You can get a world-class session done right there in your safe little space, no matter what's happening outside. If you want to build your own version of that space, a place to train hard, stay consistent, and escape for a little bit, check out Wahoo at wahoofitness.com. They've got everything from the flagship KICKR Bike Pro to the KICKR Core 2, which gives you that same legendary ride feel at a killer price point. Wahoo, building the better athlete in all of us. Okay, let's pivot to the opposite of stuff that makes your life hell. Products that you've used through the years that just made your blood boil. Like, to kick off for me, I loved tubular tires, but I also hated tubular tires. Like, I'd so many nights just trying to stretch a tubular over a rim, and like out of college the next morning, it'd be 12 o'clock at night, and it's like, oh, I hate my life. They for me were a killer. Is there anything that sticks out that you were like, hated it?
Yeah, we obviously those days, it's quite good they've gone now. We had, I think some of us old-fashioned mechanics were so used to it. that you ended up just putting up with it and doing it even though you didn't like it. I remember the first years of Jayco or of Green Edge. I turned up to training camp in December in Australia, and the team was brand new, so we had 35 sets of wheels to do Tour Down Under and national championships and things with all brand new Continentals. We didn't have any rims to stretch them on, and I think I lost most of the skin off my fingers doing it. And after about putting 5 tubulars on, I was thinking there's no way I'm going to get them all finished before we have to actually race. But yeah, thank God those days are long gone. Tubeless is much easier now. You also have, we actually for a small period, we were running inner tubes on our spare bikes on the top of the car because the sealant was drying out a little bit in the heat and the tyres were leaking air, so we were putting inner tubes in. But then you have the same issues. You put the inner tube in, the tyre's difficult to get on, and then you end up pinching the inner tube as well. So that was a bit of a nightmare. But I think in this day and age, like currently, the most dreaded thing to do is changing headset bearings. Although the system is so simple, some wisecrack decided to put brake cables up through the centre of bearings now. So to change a set of headset bearings, you have to disconnect all the disc brakes and then re-bleed all the disc brakes, and it's just a massive task to change a bearing.
Yeah, where does that line between like innovation and making something faster aerodynamically or look cooler versus the lack of utility? Like, we just can't work on it anymore. Like, now I'm dating myself, but I remember my first racing bike, it's Dura Ace 10 speed, and it had the external cables. Take you about 90 seconds to change a gear or brake cable. And it's just, maybe I'm just not as good at working on the bikes now, but it seems like a step backwards in terms of changing cables.
Yeah, I think some of the older bikes were really simple. Then they went through the phase of having internal brake cables to start with, and then you'd get some that you had a little bit of outer cable at one end of the bike and a little bit of outer cable going from your shifter around to the frame, and then in between you had nothing, and it would get dirt in there and clog up the system, so it wasn't smooth braking. And then now if you don't see it, it's more aero, and everything is basically inside the frames now, forced through the handlebars, and then down through the fork and through the frame.
So yeah, along with tubular tires here, I think we're going to have to throw internal cable routing into the most hated. Because I'm not even kidding you, Craig, I'm going to say 6 hours trying to route my dropper C-post on my mountain bike. I had an absolute nightmare. I was trying to get a magnet set and trying to trace this magnet set through the frame, and it just kept getting stuck at the bottom bracket. And then I lost a magnet. So I had to get a second magnet set to get the magnet out to start retracing the magnet thing. Oh, absolute nightmare. And it's just like, surely there's got to be, I know there is a better way. SRAM have, the AXS wireless dropper post, but I just wanted something cheap and cheerful for whacking around the local trails. And it broke my heart. But that wasn't even my worst experience routing a cable. My old time trial bike, I remember having to get fishing line. My dad used to fish a lot. I had to get fishing line, super glued it to the end of a cable, and then used a hoover to suck the fishing line out the far side to pull the cable through.
Yeah. We still have. Well, now that it's changed to disc brake, it's a bit easier. But we still use the old-fashioned gear cable or brake cable to feed into the disc brake cable, and then feed it through the frames as well. So that system is still in play. TT bikes are always a niggle because you've got cables going everywhere, and whether they be electronic cables, if you're running Shimano, or the inside of the handlebars look like a botched electrician store, and And but it's still the same thing. You're still feeding the cables that when you're building a new bike, you're still feeding it through. There's no guide that you just push the cable through and it goes through all by itself, and then you got to get it out the small hole at the other end of the bike, and that's stuck around.
What's overrated? Like some of the stuff, like ceramic speed, these oversized jockey wheels. What's the deal with them? Like, are they total waste of money, or is there some application to that type stuff?
Look, I think if you're looking for minimal gains and stuff, all that sort of stuff can help. It can be an advantage. I don't think it's super beneficial if you're just a Sunday rider and you've got money to spend and you buy all this stuff. It's not really going to make you go any faster. But the oversized jockey wheels and stuff, the idea is to get less friction on the chain, so that the bend in the chain going through your derailleur and everything is a bigger bend rather than a tight small bend, which is where you start to get friction, which can potentially slow you down. But this is top level sort of pros looking for really minimal games. So I think if I was to put the same sort of specialist stuff on my bike, it wouldn't improve my cycling at all. But for the top racing guy, probably it could help.
Could we throw bottom brackets into this new most hated category? Like bottom brackets gone from your only two options were square taper or octalink to I almost need to go onto ChatGPT now to figure out what bottom bracket I'm using. It's just minefield.
Yeah, I guess
just numbers and letters mixed together.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to what crank system you're riding as well, because obviously the bearing has to fit in the frame. We're lucky; we have Chima bottom brackets, Chima, and we actually can just the cups of the bottom bracket just screw together into the frame. Against the bottom bracket shell itself, not against the frame. It's obviously threadless now, and we can just punch the bearing in and out without changing the whole bottom bracket, because effectively it's only the bottom bracket, it's only the bearings that wear out. But ours are pretty straightforward and really simple to change. But I guess you can, when you get different cranks, different frames, and you start to get niggly systems there, which probably can throw a spanner in the works as well.
Have you ever had a part so bad that you've had to kind of quietly replace it and rebrand it? Like I was reading recently when Tyler Hamilton was racing the Tour, I think it was a year he podiumed with CSC. Look were the main title sponsor he was riding bikes with, but the Look frame wasn't super that year. So he actually commissioned Parlee bikes to build a bike, and he sprayed that bike in full Look paint. So it looked like a Look bike, but he rode a Parlee to the Tour that year.
I was actually in the team that year in CSC.
No way. So is that story true?
No, I wouldn't. I didn't know if Tyler did or not. Tyler actually, he bought Cervelo TT bike to the team, and it was painted as a Look, and Laurent Jalabert liked the bike so much he asked if he could ride it in the prologue, and then he got second. And then apparently Look's website crashed because everybody wanted to order this new bike that wasn't a Look. I know we had 4 or 5 Cervelo frames in the truck, painted as Looks, and I know Andrea Taffi didn't really like, when we switched over to Cervelo, didn't really like the Cervelo for Paris-Roubaix, so he had a C40 Colnago painted as a Cervelo, but I wasn't aware of Tyler having a bike repainted, a different brand of bike. It's possible. Back then things were not as strict as they were, but you could probably get away with some things back then. But these days you're not allowed to modify anything. You're not allowed to rebrand it with different branding. So there's quite a few rules these days.
Yeah, so you don't think it's happening much anymore at all around teams?
I wouldn't I don't think so. I mean, most World Tour teams, across the board, I don't think there's any team that really has a crappy bike anymore. They're all pretty good bikes, stock standard. But I think back in the day where they were starting to switch from, aluminium, from steel frames to titanium, and then to aluminium, and then to carbon, there you probably saw it a lot more than you would these days.
If it is happening, it's probably happening now with chain lube, like a team sponsored by Muck Off, but they don't like the Muck Off lube or something, sort of, a different product inside the bottle. Or I know Dan Martin talked to me about his last year at UAE. He couldn't eat the nutrition products, so he just was buying his own nutrition products and sticking them in whatever the team sponsor was that year and using them.
Yeah, that still happens a bit. We've got an our team, Luke Durbridge. It's not that he doesn't like the product at all. It really upsets his stomach, so he has issues with that. So he also supplies his own product, and I mean, once it's mixed in the bottle, we've got his name written on the top of the bottle. But I mean, we have our sponsors, but when you have 30 odd riders in a team, or big teams like these days, I don't think it's pretty hard to find one product that can suit everybody. Everybody's a bit different in that team.
100%. Like, I know my friends were raving about beta fuel, and I remember going out and trying to have a beta fuel, and like sprinting to the local garage, like I was very close to shitting myself. It was like everyone else talking about how amazing it was. I was like, it nearly killed me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's all these different products that some people are fine with, some people don't have an issue with it at all, and then other people, they just can't stomach the product or things like that. Going back to the sponsors, brands, and that, there is occasions where we've changed sponsor, and for example, in the classics, it's some riders have complained a little bit about the chain lube, that it's not lasting the duration of the race, or it rains in the morning and then dries up, so then your chain gets all squeaky. So we have in the past reverted back to in certain races to what we're used to and what we know has been good in the past until we've found a solution with the current sponsor to improve the product.
Yeah, we're seeing a few little hacks popping up more in the clothing space, where you're starting to see, someone cutting the sleeve off an aero base layer and using that as a bandage, or cutting a band off and using it to cover the boa dials on their shoes. We're increasingly seeing that one as well, especially Uno X lads. I spoke to Abrahamson last week, and he does that quite a bit.
Yeah, you also, again, you go back to some of the stuff. Shoes is a particular one. Some teams are sponsored by one brand of shoe. A lot of riders, it's again very individual thing. It's different shoes suited for different riders, so sometimes it doesn't align with sponsors, so they'll also wear shoe covers or cutting things up to cover logos. Or luckily, a lot of shoe sponsors these days, if a rider comes from a previous team and joins the team and they can't get used to the shoe that the team's using, the previous sponsor will actually make them shoes with no logo on it, which is pretty nice of the sponsor. Cool. Because it's, they're trying to sell their product, so they would like their logo on it. But really specific things like that, there's obviously there's always several reasons why people cover stuff up, and some people do it just for aerodynamics as well,
Every rider chases that feeling. The one where the bike just disappears, where the pedals turn easy and the road hums beneath you, and for a few fleeting seconds, everything just clicks. No effort, no noise, just flow. That moment isn't luck, it's engineering. The kind that only comes from obsession. For over 20 years, Parlee has refined the art of carbon. Every layer placed by hand, Every angle tuned by feel and data until response, balance and speed exist in perfect harmony. You don't notice a Parlee because it's flashy. You notice it because it feels right. Because every input, every climb, every corner happens exactly how you imagined it would. Customer production, every frame goes through the same uncompromising process, traceable, tested, and finished by people who still believe craftsmanship matters. Parlee doesn't chase trends, they chase that moment every rider lives for, when the bike and the body move as one. Parlee Cycles, engineered for that feeling that keeps us coming back. Yeah. I always wonder, and I haven't seen it yet, but are we going to see mechanics launching and bringing their own products to the market? Because no one understands. I guess product design happens when you see a problem reoccur and you're like, there's no solution to that problem. But no one is closer to the coal face of these problems on a day-to-day basis than you guys. Is there ever whispers among the mechanics of, oh, I'd love to bring this out, or I'd love to bring that out?
Over the years, I have probably heard it a few times, but generally when you keep having the problems, you're always so close with the sponsor that you're actually just relaying it, or they're even at races when the problem keeps occurring, and they sort of tend to be the ones that go away and solve the problem or redevelop their product. So potentially it could work, like mechanics could come out with their own. We've got a mechanic in our team, and he goes and buys his own soap liquid for washing cars and things like that, because he's so particular about all this stuff. And I don't know how much he spends out of his own pocket to bring all these different bits and pieces. But in terms of actually designing stuff, I don't know. I guess some mechanics in the past have gone on from being mechanic to actually working in the industry, where they're working with the companies to design stuff and use their feedback from what they're used to help design better products.
I love that. Greg, appreciate your time. Pass my best on to Steve Cummins. Good to see him landing in with you guys, and we'll catch up soon.